Greetings, my human friends. This is Rudolf of Germany, the tall white alien. Today I would like to give you some ideas about what the future holds for mankind, the future of mankind. Let's start with a few prior points which has to be considered before we can make a more reasonable assessment. The Western world is eager to create some minor wars in the world, particularly in the Near East, in order to boost their defense spending, which is the biggest part of the tax income of, for example, the United States. Half of all the money which are created by Americans are going into defense spending. At the moment, it's about $730 billion. It's extremely large. It's actually the largest industry in America and a very large part of the spending of any other Western country. But these spendings can only be boosted and even be higher if there are some minor wars in the world which have to be fed with weapons and all kinds of equipment necessary to fight a war. So this is the aim behind the warmongers in the Near East and elsewhere. Plus it has a second effect, and the second effect is simply that people are frightened. People are frightened of wars, and they're looking to the Near East and wonder what's going to happen if the Iran or Syrian countries are going to be invaded or being fought by heavy weapons. Are Americans, are Europeans being affected by these wars? Do they have to protect themselves in one way or the other? Question mark. This is what's going on to the heads of people if a war is in the making, or at least it looks like it. Naturally, the Western leaders, the hidden hand, is interested in distorting and confusing the mind of their citizens. So they are not looking at the real problems which they are facing, the real problems which are laying in the near future of mankind. The wars are only one side which make a lot of money, but the real interest is, of course, in another area. The real enemy of the Western governments and other governments as well are not other countries which are in need to be fought for some security, which is nonsense, but the real enemies of these leaders are their own citizens. The actual fight, which is going on for many, many thousands of years, is the fight between a small ruling class and a large part of the population which is actually powerless. But the fear of empowerment of the masses and then the final execution of the small group of rulers is always in the back of their heads. Look at the French Revolution, for example, and there have been other revolutions as well. And this is the core fear of the small ruling class. And what they have in mind to do is a very simple and by today's technology feasible method in order to avoid future revolutions which are being fought against them. We're talking about the biocomputer, or the biorobot, better to describe. The biorobot is nothing but a human being which is implanted with a computer chip. 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, the technology companies and their scientists had the idea to create, and until recently still had the idea to create robots. These are human-like, human-looking creatures, completely artificial, made of steel, plastic, and other components. and they should resemble, they should even be able to move and behave and work and function almost like a human being. And you can see, if you look in the internet, that there are some companies are quite advanced in building robots, and they're moving quite swiftly, but never as good as a human being. Naturally, and this is the last development and nobody ever spoke of, is the abandonment of the idea of creating artificial computers and trying to resemble something like which looks like a human being and functions very closely. This is a task which is very, very hard to accomplish, if at all. Much easier it is to take already a biocomputer, which is a human being, for example, a healthy human being, and just implant a small computer chip in him, and this way you create a perfect robot. Because the motoric motions, the complete functioning of the system is just perfect and does not have to be copied by some kind of artificial materials. So you simply implant a computer chip, and there you have the perfect robot working for you. In the end, you will have only a very small, maybe 5,000 to 10,000 people group of, let's say, leadership, which is not implanted with a computer chip and has a free will. And you will have eventually in the United States and Europe approximately 800 million computer chipped robots working for them. Robots which are basically happy. They will never question the decisions of their leadership, which will have an instant impact on their lives. They will work double as much, every single one of them, double as much as they work right now. They will, in their spare time, be happy to be entertained the way the leadership has created for them. And this little leadership of about 5,000 to 10,000 people will have all the material goodies which anybody can imagine and far beyond. They live in a material paradise, in beautiful gardens and villas and castles, and they will only for themselves, this small group, have the finest hospitals and research facility just for themselves. Diseases will be eliminated under them, and the life expectancy between 150 and 200 years will be something very common. People in this society, which you can call the gods of the future, will have no fear of revolutions anymore, because there are 800 million in the West and eventually 8 billion all over the planet will be computer chipped, and they will function perfectly and will never make any kind of attempt to overrule the small class which will reap the benefits of their work. Be there money or be there bitcoins or be there any kind of other means of extorting the workmanship, extorting the labor of their bio-robots, we don't know yet. But there will be always a way to abuse of the masses, and this will be also the fact in the future. So life, you think, will be a pleasure for these 5,000 to 10,000 have-gods or regular human beings, as you and your neighbors are at the moment, and it will be rather computerized and subconscious existence and non-conscious existence for the bio-robots, which are humans, the human being right now, which is the future workforce. But it is not as easy as you think. These 5,000 to 10,000 privileged who live the most beautiful life, which has never in the past been lived like that, will have also their problems. And the problems are simply that their minds are coming and their emotions are coming into their way. Like any human being, if they are not computer chipped, they will have to suffer under doubts, they will have to suffer under mental breakdowns, and so on. Particularly if you live a very privileged life where just by having a thought of something you like to have or desire, you will have it thousandfold over. There will be a problem, there will be a moment in your existence where you will question yourself. What is it all about? Some of these 5 to 10,000 privileged will look into the occult world, and they will look into the science of the future, and they will also be able to tap into other dimensions, as I have been speaking before. But naturally, this will be only a very small group. Most of them, they will indulge in some material pleasures, and they will, if they don't find a partner in their privileged surroundings, they will maybe pick one from these biorobots which are implanted and have them redesigned for their needs. So they will be servants. They will have the most beautiful girls and women and have them reprogrammed to serve them for a lifetime. But even that will be not fulfilling forever. So these 5 to 10,000 will have eventually a spiritual and mental problem. And only a very few of them who look beyond the world as we know it, and they look into the other world, which I also have described to you. Only these people will have eventually a future because they go beyond. But most of the so-called privileged one will live and suffer under boredom and will eventually have psychological problems. And there comes in a twist of, I would say, the future turning things around. We can call it the metamorphosis of existence. The ones who are privileged and live the privileged life of the so-called have-gods will have an urge to be as happy as their workers, their bio-robots which have an implant, because they have been programmed to be happy no matter what will happen to them. And by observing these, they will become jealous because they still have a regular, normal human brain. And they will come up with the idea to have an implant themselves, which will be, of course, a special implant, a refined implant, which will be differing from the one of the ordinary biorobot, which are the former humans. But that will be the end of mankind as we know it, because if everybody is going to be implanted, there will be no ordinary, regular human being on Earth left. Until next time, Rudolf of Germany.